Oh no! Oh no! It's me again. Can't believe it. Can't believe it's this guy again. Well, today's a very weird day. My cats have been acting weird, and there's supposed to be a really big storm later today. So, I kind of wanted to record something before the storm maybe makes me lose power, since I actually have time to do so right now. Um, so yeah, here it is, episode 3. I took some notes again, as I was editing, and I was not that there's much editing to be done, but as I was editing and as I was what do you call it, rendering my video, I took some notes down of what I wanted to discuss for this episode, and there's a few things. The first thing I wanted to talk about was last time I played. I found a ring called the Ring of the Evil Eye. And it says, according to legend, this ring contains the spirit of the Evil Eye, a dark beast which assaulted Astora. The strength of the Evil Eye does not waver, and HP is absorbed from fallen enemies. What's cool about this is that if you're low on HP and you're not the best at the game, and you run out of Estus because you've been spending so much Estus to heal yourself because you're bad, well, you could wear the ring as like a emergency healing, but then you'd have to be pretty successful in combat encounters. So it's like it's a risk reward, and there's not many sources of health in Dark Souls. There's like Estus, there's Humanity, there's Divine Blessings, there's like a one shield that gives you a little bit of health regen. So one weapon that gives you a little bit of health steal when you kill things, when you attack things, and there's the Ring of the Evil Eye. So there's really limited healing options, so this makes the Ring of the Evil Eye actually quite powerful, provided you're pretty good at the game and you end up gaining more HP than you lose during combat. I think that's pretty nice. If the healing system was more hardcore and more punishing, then the Ring of the Evil Eye would be even better, and would be an even more it'd be even a bigger risk reward thing to consider for yourself. And in the last episode as well, early on when I was fighting those frogs and those stone statue guys, I got the Wolf Ring, which is one of the special rings granted to the 4 Knights of Gwyn. The Wolf Ring belongs to Artorias the Abyss Walker. Artorias had an unbendable will of steel, and it was unmatched with a great sword. So it doesn't say what it does, but here it says boosts poise, and poise is basically how much it's like your stagger resistance. So sometimes when you get hit, well, actually, I'll just show you. Poise, ability to receive attacks without breaking form. So right now I have 52 poise because the Wolf Ring gives you 50 poise if I'm not mistaken. It gives you 40 poise. Right now I have 12 poise because I'm wearing the Elite Knight Leggings, which have some poise because it's a form of heavier armor. And the Wolf Ring gives you 40 poise for free, so it's actually really useful on low poise characters. That way, even if you wear light armor, you can get staggered with more difficulty, which is very useful. And I was wearing the Witch's Ring, but I don't need the Witch's Ring. It actually does nothing except for let you talk to one character that we're gonna meet a bit later on. So for now, it's not necessary. But the Witch's Ring is pretty hard to get. You need to exchange some items with the crows, which I'll show later as well. But because it's kind of hard to get, and the item that you would trade with the crows for it are pretty valuable, it's nice to have the ring for free, which is why I started with it, because otherwise otherwise the thief starts with the Master Key, so I didn't have to take the Master Key as my starting gift. So that's something that I considered. And even though I don't really want to talk about the lore, I do want to talk about how the story and the lore is delivered in the game through mechanics and through systems, and how something that I talked about in the previous episode, which I called the burden of spectacle, or the burden of beauty, where it's in the hands of the player to appreciate the natural beauty of the game instead of it being shown through cutscenes or through set pieces. It's you do everything yourself pretty much, except for very few cutscenes, which is something I really respect about Dark Souls. It's the kind of how much uninterrupted gameplay you can get save for the few cutscenes that the game has. But I think that because of this fact that there's so few cutscenes, you actually the cutscenes that they do use are usually quite effective and that tend to be you know, used to good effect. And I think it makes the cutscenes that do occur feel more impactful when they do. And otherwise, you know, like I said, you have the burden of beauty on yourself. But the game also has what I would call the burden of narrative, or the burden of lore, I guess, where, you know, the game actually has some pretty well made, you know, what would I call this, like world building? 5 green titanite shards. Yeah, it's pretty good, you know, world building, and it has pretty good lore and character stories and everything. But everything in the game, like story wise and character wise and lore wise, it's all optional in the sense that it's all in the game for you to find, but it's oh my god, it's not in the game for you to find, but it's wow, I keep missing with this weapon. It's all in the game for you to find, but it's up to you to find it. It's up, not just up to you to find it, but sometimes, you know, it's right there, it's already found. You just have to decide to actually interact with it, which I think is interesting. For example, you know, one way obviously is the item descriptions, which I've been reading occasionally when I think it's relevant. But even beyond that, you know, it's like the NPCs. If you don't want to talk to the NPCs, you don't have to talk to the NPCs. And if you don't want to interact with the story at all, you can just kind of play the game, and you'll actually, for the most part, you'll actually find everything you need to find yourself as you play. Like the game is straightforward enough that you don't need to understand the story and what's going on to actually progress through the game. And yeah, you don't need to understand what's going on to actually progress, which I appreciate, because if you just want to fight bosses and fight enemies and get lost in the world and have a good time, you can. And if you want to actually interact with the story, learn about the characters, learn about the lore and everything, then you also can. And once again, server, I think, is the weapon I was talking about. Server. Imbued with a frightful occult energy, which restores HP with each hit. So once again, it's one of those things where it's an alternative healing method, which is very valuable if you're either good at the game and therefore can heal in combat. But the thing is, at the same time, if you're good at the game, you won't need to heal. So I guess it's to help people who are a little bit worse at the game, and then that's when it becomes the actual trade-off, where, you know, if you start running out of Estus, then you're having to heal through combat forces you to interact with the combat anyways. It forces you to take that risk, and then it's a matter of, like, are you good enough at the combat to not die and then heal. I'm gonna use a homeward bone to get to the bonfire, because I'm gonna die from poison if this keeps going. And anyways, I want to explore I want to reinforce my weapon, because I found some beautiful large titanite shards. So the swamp's pretty unforgiving, I would say, because it poisons you with a very slow form of poison, which is fine. You know, the poison you get from the swamp is actually weaker than the poison you would get from enemies. However, the swamp also slows you down your movement and your rolling. So it's, you know, it makes exploration kind of a slog, and because you spend more time walking around because you're slow, the poison has more time to affect you, which I appreciate. Also, look at that. You can directly see the path upwards to salvation with the torches. That's once again, you know, the torches are pretty they're pretty obvious once you know to look for them, but I think it's a more unobtrusive way to guide the player, instead of, you know, putting yellow paint or stuff that looks and feels really artificial. Here there's an area. Well, there's an area. So this is kind of it's a secret that I respect, and Dark Souls has a lot of secrets and little hidden things. But, you know, Dark Souls has a few things, invisible walls like this. And here it's pretty. Some people say it's pretty evil. Some people say it's pretty clever. But there's an invisible wall hidden behind an invisible wall. And a lot of the invisible walls, you know, they're placed in such a way that if you play video games, you kind of have the intuition that they would be there. You know, it's like finding an object behind a waterfall. You kind of just know it's there if you played a video game before. But beyond that, sometimes there's hints. You know, for example, in this case, the first chest gives you a plank shield, and it's like one of the worst shields in the game. So you're like, that's definitely not the real treasure here. And then, so maybe behind it, there's something more valuable. So you check it, oh, Twin Humanities, that's very quite useful. But then you might think, you might be satisfied and not try to check further, but why not? And the one way to know that there's actually an area here is that if you play co-op, it puts a fog wall near the tree, and usually fog walls are there to gate areas. So this area is the Great Hollow. It's a big hollow tree, as you can see. And what I like about this area is the fact that it's entirely optional and like super hidden. And it's actually how do I say this? It's actually an area made with a good deal of effort. So I really respect the fact that despite the effort put into the area, it's optional and like players can easily miss this. It's something that I really respect, because as a game designer, you kind of want to showcase what you made, especially when when you put a lot of effort into it. So having Chloranthy ring, that's going to be way more useful. So the Chloranthy ring is this ancient ring engraved with a large green flower, is of unknown origin, hastens the regeneration of stamina. So I'm going to wear that instead, because poise is not that useful if you don't expect to get hit. What I like about the fact that something I like about the Chloranthy ring is that it says it's engraved with a green flower, and the ring itself is of unknown origin, and nobody knows what nobody knows where it comes from. So finding it in this super hidden area that seems like a primordial ancient tree, which they talk about in the intro cutscene when they talk about before fire was discovered. All that everybody knew were great arch trees and everlasting dragons, and we're probably in great arch tree right now. But basically, yeah, this tree is like this primordial life form. Like, it's one of the most ancient things to ever exist. So having a ring of unknown origin that's been like its meaning has been lost to time is inside a tree who's basically been there since the beginning of time makes total sense to me. And you can there's also internal consistency in the sense that the Chloranthy ring is engraved with a green flower, and it hastens stamina regeneration. And the green blossom is a green flower that boosts your stamina when you use it. And there's an item in the game called the Grass Crest Shield, which has the pattern of a green herb on it, and it hastens your stamina regen. So you could think like all of this is related, probably. The Grass Crest Shield, whatever plant is drawn on it, is probably related to whatever plant is drawn on the Grass Crest Shield is probably related to the what have I done? I'm gonna kill myself probably if I go down here. But yeah, there's that consistency of oh, I did it, of what the green plant means, which I like, and there's also that consistency of green. In video games in general, so this is kind of like an intuition thing, but in video games in general, green things tend to be associated with stamina. So the green things are associated with stamina, and in this case, all the stamina related green things are probably the same thing, and it's just that the meaning kind of has been lost. And it's something you see a lot in real life too. Across many cultures, certain animals will all represent the same thing because we have that human bias, which I think is pretty cool. But to go back to what I was saying, it's very tempting as a game developer to want to showcase everything you make, because oh my god, I'm gonna get cursed, aren't I? Yeah, I got cursed. So this is something that actually never happened to me before. But getting cursed insta kills you, and it lowers your health by half. While cursor HP is halved, lifting the curse requires a purging stone or the aid of the healer in Yolando. So, I don't know if I have a purging stone. I do not. So I'm gonna be cursed for a while, I think. So that's gonna be cool. This is one of those things that I think is really cool. It's actually a how do you say this? It's a very Dark Souls-y experience, if you will, in the sense that I'm stuck down here in Blighttown. I'm gonna die. You're stuck down here in Blighttown. You haven't seen the surface in so long. It's already this like hostile place, and now you got cursed because you dared to go in the Great Hollow, and you fought Basilisk. Now you're cursed in Blighttown, in a hostile area, and because there's no warping at this point in the game yet, now you're stuck in a situation where you have no purging stones, you have no way to get rid of your curse, and you're just stuck here now with half health and nothing to do. However, and this is something I hope I get to show, there's oh my god, there's an enemy type later on after the Great Hollow that drops purging stones, so you might be able to heal yourself from your curse. So it's not that punishing, but if you don't know what you're doing, you may end up cursed for a long time, which I respect, I appreciate. I like the very Dark Souls experience. I like when because of the lack of warping early on, you have these kind of little permanent mini misadventures. So anyway, before I got cursed and went on a tangent, as a game developer, you often want to showcase what you made, because you're like, I put so much effort in these textures and in these music tracks and in the so on and so on and so on. So you want to make the content either like optional but easily accessible, or you want to make the content mandatory. So having a secret area like this, where it's like super hidden, and it's not only is it super hidden, but it's entirely optional, I think it shows a lot of respect from the developers. And by respect from the developers, I mean this in the sense that, people typically, I think it's kind of a symptom of modern game design, but people will tend to make things for beginners, but they also will tend to make things for people who don't really care. Like, because you don't really care, what they're gonna do is they're gonna try to hook you into the game with conventional game design, or with like people-pleasing design, with how are they gonna make the experience more typical of a video game that you're expected to play. And I don't like that, because if somebody likes your game, they're gonna go out of their way to discover things. They're gonna go out of their way to play the game. So instead of trying to appeal to, I guess you could say, the lowest common denominator, I like when developers appeal to like when developers appeal to oh, look, that's me. The statue here, that's cursed, that's me. In the online, if you play online, you can see other people getting cursed. So if you go in an area and there's a bunch of cursed people, you're like, oh man, these people had a hard time. And it's pretty funny to see. It's like seeing a bunch of bloodstains somewhere, like seeing a bunch of messages somewhere. I don't have a lot of curse resist. Curse resist is actually something that's pretty hard to find. But oh, I almost got cursed again. Yeah, curse resist is something that's pretty hard to find. But if you have a lot of humanity in your counter, you end up having curse resist, because every humanity point will grant you a little bit more curse resist, which is something I think is pretty cool. But yeah, to go back to what I was saying, like, if people like your game, they're going to go out of their way to find things. So I think it's better to make your game fun and have secrets for interested players to find, instead, and putting that effort where you love and you trust your players, and you know that they're gonna go and find they love your game, and you can trust in your players to discover these things that you put so much effort in. So you can put secrets, and it'll just make the players feel smart. It'll make the players feel wonder and amazement that there's such a secret in the game. I think it's like a win-win for you as a developer to appeal to players that care and to make stuff that will be hidden. And even now, like, you know, you could say, oh, it sucks because now in modern games, because of data mining, people will, you know, secrets aren't really secrets anymore, and people are easily going to be able to find them. That's all the more reason, I guess, to put secrets in your games is, well, if you're scared that nobody's ever going to see your thing, and it's got all that time, talent, and effort is going to go unnoticed, well, now there's even less risk of your talent going unnoticed, because people are just going to data mine your game and find it anyways and be amazed that you had something like that in your game. And this is something that I've heard said before in regards to the Great Hollow and Ash Lake, but something I want to say myself in my own words. Wow, look at that. A hidden area hidden behind a hidden area. It's very striking, the Ash Lake. So this is one of the more, I guess you could say, dreamlike elements of Dark Souls. Is the Ash Lake. You know, it looks so strange, so primordial. It's got like this music to it. You're like, okay, so I was down in Blighttown and now I'm even lower. How can this be? You know, how can such a place exist? And I like that. I really love that. It makes the world feel way bigger and way more mysterious than it initially seems. And it also kind of, you know, a lot of mythological stories talk about the world tree or the world turtle, about how like the world exists on top of a tree or on top of a turtle. And in this case, you might think like, are all of these worlds, are all of these trees just other worlds? Or is Ash Lake what the world was like before before fire was discovered, before you know, the power of souls was discovered, before like, is this what is this what the Age of Dark is like? Well, no, because the Age of Dark is not even I might die. But yeah, the Age of Dark is as they said, it's it's not back to the primordial times, because in the primordial times there was no such thing as light or dark, because the light was, yeah, these clams are pretty strong, but these clams they can cure your curse if they drop a, oh my god, these clams can drop purging stones, which is gonna help you with your curse, but they're very strong. Especially when you have half health. And there's a Hydra, which is gonna kick your ass. I really like Ash Lake. I like the implications of Ash Lake. I like they don't really explain what Ash Lake is, but that you can make a guess that, you know, the fact that there's a bunch of these primordial trees, and the fact that there's later on there's gonna be an everlasting dragon. It makes you think that this is probably what the world was like before the Age of Fire. And also the ash, you know, ash is what happens when there's when a fire burns everything. So it could be that, you know, there were countless trees, and now a lot of them were turned to ash. Or it might be that this is all that's left of the dragons, because the dragons were all killed by Gwyn and his knights. It makes you ask a lot of questions, and I'm sure there's lore answers, but, you know, like I said, the burden of lore is on the player, the burden of story is on the player. So, you know, you discover things at your own. Oh my god, these guys are so strong. It's up to you to answer the questions, and it's up to you to think about the implications of what you see, which is something I really appreciate. You know, it doesn't tell you the answers. There's no NPC that's like, oh, did you know that Ash Lake is actually what the world used to look like? Or, you know, nobody says like, oh, you know, Ash Lake, this is where, you know, every tree is actually another world. It just doesn't really say anything. It just presents itself as it is, and you get to appreciate it for what it is and draw your own conclusions. Some people might say that's lazy storytelling, but I don't think so, because it's not really storytelling. It's more so just an aspect of the world design and the game design, and it's an aspect of the lore more so than the story. And lore can be vague, I think. I think a story should be told in a game, like even if it's a really simple story like Dark Souls' story. I think a story should be told, but I think lore can be implied, lore can be left open-ended, and like anything, you know, open-ended stories and open-ended lore is always good because if it's too straightforward, that it doesn't make you think, and if you don't think, then it's boring. It's like in or is it in Futurama when Fry does like the most obvious song that's just like, oh, you know, Layla, I really love you, and the robot devil's like, you can't tell people how you feel, that makes me like, it's too easy, that makes me angry. That's how I feel with certain things, where I like when it's thought-provoking and it makes you wonder about things, which I think Dark Souls is really good at. I think there's a lot of stuff in Dark Souls where you can kind of connect the dots and infer about what's going on while it being open-ended enough that, like, even if you think you might have the answers, it might be, you might be off, or you might you know, there's a reason why I think, you know, people like to watch these lore videos about Dark Souls, or they like to discuss Dark Souls as lore. It's because it's so, in a way, it speaks to us because it's a lot of themes that are, I think it's a lot of themes that are really interesting in all human stories in general. You know, stuff like you know, the passage of time and the heat death of the universe, and like stagnance, like things becoming stagnant, and the all these different themes. You know, pantheons of gods and whatnot. I think all of those things are things that a lot of stories and us humans kind of like to talk about and care about. So Dark Souls has all of these things, and you know, while you might not have that many characters to interact with, I think the characters that you do interact with are interesting enough that it's you know, it makes you want to learn more about them. It makes you want to interact with them more. It makes you want to guess a little bit about them more. Oh my god, I keep missing. I like the mushroom guys too, but they kill you in one hit. Everything's gonna kill me in one hit at this point with how much HP I have. But yeah, the burden of beauty and the burden of story, as I like to call them, it ties into how I feel too about it's the weird collisions because of DS fix. But the burden of beauty and the burden of story ties into what I was saying earlier about also hidden areas and optional content, where if you care about the game, you will necessarily see these things. You will necessarily pay attention to these things. You will necessarily want to know more, want to see more, want to appreciate the craft more. So I think in all aspects, you know, to make an experience of a game that doesn't feel pandering, or that doesn't feel what's the word I'm looking for, condescending, where it's like, look, I made this beautiful art asset, look at it, please. It comes off as desperate, and it comes off as condescending. Like, you know, you as a player don't care enough to look at it yourself, so it has to be shown to you by the developers. I think that's one of the reasons why Dark Souls and the FromSoft games, the modern FromSoft games, endure so much, is that they treat you with respect, and they expect you to, if you care, they will expect you to see what you want to see, and I really respect that. And the music in Ashlight, actually, you know, the music's not diegetic, of course. You know, like the music track that plays right now is, you know, it's not somebody in the game singing. But I appreciate that, like, for the most part, Dark Souls has almost no non-diegetic music. Like, for the most part, the entire game is a silent experience where all you hear is the enemy sounds, the sounds of your footsteps, the sound of your weapons, your armor, stuff like that. It's all ambient noise. It's all diegetic noise. And the few times you hear music, it's used to great effect. You know, either it's boss music, or it's this guy's been following me for so long. It's always like, yeah, boss music, or it's music in these areas where it adds a really interesting mood to it. Like, I think Ash Lake without music would be really impactful, because it would make it a lot more solemn and a lot more you know, like this primordial silence. Like you're so far down, you're in such an old place that the sound just doesn't it's just silent. Like sound doesn't reach down here, kind of thing. It's the everlasting dragon. You can cut his tail, which I think is really funny, and he doesn't care because he's so old and so blasé. So they say that dragons are immortal if as long as you don't. Their scales are what make them immortal. So I assume that this is like no big deal for him. I'm gonna enter the covenant even if it does nothing, because it's a PvP based covenant, and it's a PvP based covenant, and I don't have access to the servers, so there's no reason to join the covenant. But this can make me talk about the covenants, and the covenants are something that I think on paper is an interesting mechanic, in the sense that it tends to be like a faction that you join, and it gives you like a side objective to do as you play the game, whether it's you know, more of a and the thing is that most of the covenants tie into the multiplayer, but not all of them necessarily do. For example, you know, being you can get all the covenant items by playing single player. You just have to farm a little bit. So even if the servers are dead, and even if you don't interact with the online, you still have access to the covenant stuff. You know, like for example, but you don't get to interact with the full mechanics of it. You just get to interact with the rewards, I guess. And the covenant is something that I wish the sequels kind of played with a little bit more, because I think it's one of the more half-baked aspects of Dark Souls, and I'm not sure if it's because the game didn't have enough development time, or if it's you know, I'm not like 100% sure of what's going on with the. Oh god, I might be able to use the Hydra to my advantage to kill this clown, and maybe I'll get a purging stone. No purging stone. It's pretty tough when you're cursed, honestly. I know for a fact I can beat Blighttown with, even though I'm cursed, but the enemies here are pretty strong. They're like mid-late game enemies. What was I saying? Oh yeah, covenants. So all the covenants kind of interact with the multiplayer in some way. You know, the Sunlight Covenant is for cooperation. So the way you interact with the covenant is that if you help people, you get sunlight medals, and they get sunlight medals. So it's and that's how you progress in the covenant. You know, then you have the PvP covenants, which are the Dark Moon Covenant, the Dark Wraith Covenant, and the Dragon Covenant. So like Dragon Covenants, you basically put dragon messages down, and if people see a dragon message, they can opt to fight you, and then you fight, and then if you win, you get a dragon scale. Dragon scales are good for upgrading dragon weapons, but also dragon scales are good for giving to the everlasting dragon so that you can level up the Dragon Covenant. And then you have what other covenants are there? The Jungle Covenant, which is the Dark Moon Forest People Covenant, which is a covenant where you hunt people who trespass into an area. So once again, it's like a PvP based covenant. A lot of covenants are like just factions for the multiplayer, I guess, if you want to see it that way, which you know, some people might find cool, some people might find uncool. This is so awkward because of the collisions, but we did it. Yeah, there's a lot of weird collisions here in Ash Lake because of my mod, but it's okay. Oh. And but yeah, I think the covenants, you know, had they made the game feel different when you are in a different covenant, because right now all it does is, like I said, it makes the multiplayer experience slightly different. Like it gives flavor to multiplayer, so it makes the player want to interact with the multiplayer a little bit more. But I kind of wish it impacted the game a little bit more, because you know, in religion, I guess, or just in general, the word covenant has a heavy meaning. You know, it's like a deal you make with something. It's almost like a form of it's like a very, it's a deal with very strong connotations to it. Like it's a deal where it's actually a big deal. It's a deal that is a big deal. That sounds so stupid, but it's a, you know, it's like a, it's a really big like give and take kind of thing. And I find that the experience in Dark Souls there's not enough commitment to your covenant, sadly, because it's just flavor for the multiplayer. I think the only covenant that has decent gameplay interactions to it is the Chaos Servant, because Chaos Servant you can actually do the without really interacting with the multiplayer that much, and it actually changes the way you play a little bit, because it's about giving humanity to the fair lady, and humanity is something that is pretty plentiful in the game, but it's still, despite it being plentiful, it's still a resource that is just precious enough and useful enough that giving it away feels like a big deal. So by being a Chaos Servant and giving away your humanity to the fair lady, that's like a, you know, how do I say this? It's like you're there is some level of dedication, like I'm giving up this precious resource for my covenant, and you get good rewards from it too. So that's like another bonus, is that you get those like some pretty good stuff as a reward. But I think that maybe it's because it's single, you can do it mostly single player, and that it kind of impacts how you play a little bit. I think that it's a little bit more meaningful in a way, and I think the other covenants are just not meaningful enough. Like, you know, being a Grave Lord, for example, it means that you make other people's lives worse, and if your attempt at making their life worse succeeds, you get an Eye of Death, and then you can give Eyes of Death to Nito, and then become stronger and stronger in the covenant. But the thing is, you know, it doesn't feel like you have to change your gameplay style at all. You know, like if it forced you into, if it, like, for example, to be in the Gravelord Covenant, you always had to be undead, because, you know, he's the Grave Lord, you know, he's the Lord of Death, he's the first of the dead. So having to be always in dead form and not being able to play as a human, so you can't interact with the multiplayer because you're always in dead form. And since you're always in dead form, you know, the only way, you know, you don't need humanity, which is why Eyes of Death become your main resource instead. And you want your Gravelording to succeed because you want to get those Eyes of Death, because it's the only way because anyways, you're going to interact with the you're sacrificing your multiplayer experience, where you get to interact with people directly through multiplayer, by interacting with them indirectly through multiplayer via Gravelording. And you stop caring about humanity, because who cares about humanity if you're an undead guy, and you start caring about Eyes of Death, which are your main resource. I think that could be kind of cool. And then maybe you could even make it so your undead form looks more skeletal instead of looking more zombie-like. So that would also be like a, look, it's my statue. That would also be like a way to kind of show your dedication, maybe. That's just like, you know, this is like a really dumb idea that I'm suggesting. It's not very well thought out, and it's not, you know, it's not refined, but just something like that, where like it changes the way you play, and it feels like a significant, it's a big deal to enter a covenant. That's what I'm trying to say. So the fact that in the game it's very like low commitment, and they make it seem like a big deal, like, oh, if you abandon your covenant, that's a sin, because you're kind of showing disrespect to the previous covenant. You know, you're like a little covenant fuckboy, you know. It's supposed to be a big deal, but it doesn't feel like a big deal, because every covenant is so hands off. There's no consequences to breaking covenant. There's no sacrifices you have to do in gameplay for covenants. It's just a half-baked thing. And Dark Souls 2 tried to do covenants too, and you know, in Dark Souls 2 the covenants were also kind of half-baked, but they had a little bit more personality to them, I guess. You know, you still had the invasion covenant, you still had the cooperation covenant, you still had the covenant that, then they had like a covenant where you help new players So it's like, it's still a cooperation covenant, but instead of being cooperation to fight against, oh my god. Oh my god. Instead of being a covenant where you help players to defeat bosses, it's a covenant where you, oh my god. These stupid ass collisions. Ooh. It's a covenant where you when people get invaded, you get summoned into their world to help them fight the invaders. I think that's cool because, you know, some people might not want help for bosses because they're like, well, if I get help for bosses, then, you know, I'm not interacting with the game fully, which I can respect. But I don't want to interact with the multiplayer, so if I get invaded, that stresses me out. So I'd like to be able to ignore the I like to be able to have somebody help me when I get invaded. I can respect that. You know, it's cowardice, but I respect it. The covenant has its place. It serves a purpose. Once again, there's no commitment to it. It's just if you're in this covenant, people will help you when you get invaded. And if you're in the kind of the other aspect of that covenant, it's like, well, you do nothing, but if somebody gets invaded, you'll get sent to their world to help them. So it, you know, there's a mechanical thing to it. It's fun. It serves a purpose. It's actually different. And it makes you feel like you're interacting with the online and you feel like you're a helpful guide. But at the same time, there's no commitment to it. There's no risk or there's no reward. There's no risk. There's a little bit of reward. It doesn't change the way you play. It doesn't change the how you interact with the game. And I think that's a failure of the covenants. But maybe they never meant for the covenants to be like that, and they just meant the covenants to be these little multiplayer factions. And if that's the case, then so be it. But I think you know, especially concerning the game, the online will die eventually, as it has for me. The online will die eventually, so why not make it so there's single player ramifications to being in a covenant, and there's actually it changed the way you play a little bit. That way you can still have a taste of the covenants, and the covenants still feel significant despite the lack of online interactions. I don't know, maybe I'm asking for too much. And in Dark Souls 3, I think they made the covenants even more loosey-goosey. Like, they once again, they tried to kind of give each covenant a purpose, but it became even less of a commitment thing, because you could just switch between covenants at will by like equipping the covenant. Basically, each covenant had like an item, and if you equipped the item, you would be part of that covenant, and then you could just do covenant related interactions. You know, that's fine and all, if that's what they wanted, but I feel like it's missing a little bit of that gravitas that the word covenant implies, and that the mechanic could realistically have. Because in Dark Souls, you know, nothing exists for itself. You know, nothing exists for the convenience of the player. Nothing exists in a vacuum. Everything kind of ties into something else, and most things are like a risk reward kind of thing. So the fact that covenants aren't really risk reward, I think it's a shame. But maybe I'm just a grumpy single player gamer who wishes that the game cared less about online and more about single player. You know, who knows? I don't know. I'm just kind of proposing that in my own way. Speaking of online that doesn't exist anymore, I will become human actually, because wait, can you not become human if you're cursed? Is that something that because I've never been cursed before, so I don't actually know how it works. Okay, no, your counter still goes up. It's just that because you have a skull on it, you can't see it. Cannot reverse hollowing while cursed. Okay, well, I can't access... there's an NPC that can invade you here. That gives you some pretty good equipment, but sadly I cannot get invaded because I'm cursed. We're just gonna proceed. When I was at the bonfire, you know, there's always the option to level up, but that makes me think about something, which is last time I talked about soft and hard progress, and you know, I defined hard progress as actually progressing through the game and getting further in the story, or in like the boss progression, or whatever like main progression metric the game has. Getting further into the game according to those metrics, that's like hard progress. And then soft progress is stuff like it's leveling up, it's, you know, beating an enemy that doesn't respawn. That way, since the enemy doesn't respawn, it means that if you beat that enemy, technically the game is a little bit easier now. Stuff like that. And it made me think about the way, you know, progressing in a game makes you feel. And in general, progressing in a game makes you feel good because, you know, that's how our brains are wired. That's how we feel. And usually progressing through a game is rewarding. You get to see more content, you might get to experience more things, you just get to have fun. So it made me think about why so many games have RPG mechanics now. And I think I can kind of answer a little bit. And I think one of the reasons why so many games have RPG mechanics now is because RPG mechanics are a form of soft progress. Because let's say you level up. One level in the grand scheme of things doesn't give you much. However, it is still progress. You still feel like you accomplished something. You got stronger. Even if you didn't get stronger because you got better at the game, you didn't get stronger because you learned the mechanics better, you still got stronger, like statistically speaking. Therefore, you feel like you've accomplished a little bit of soft progress. And it's the same things in so many games that aren't RPGs. They'll still have RPG mechanics now where, oh, you know, you unlocked a new ability, or you are unlocked, you got to level up and you got a new skill that you can use now. And you could argue that all these things that you unlock, all these abilities that you unlock, are things that you should have from the get-go, because locking them behind levels or locking them behind skill points or whatever means that you're missing out on your full moveset. And it's like just artificially lengthening, it's artificially limiting the complexity of the game until you it's like artificially limiting the complexity of the game until you get further into the game as you progress. And I think that's kind of, it's true. It's like in Devil May Cry, for example. Why do I have to unlock moves when clearly the intended way to play the game is, you know, Dante must die with all your oh my god, Dante must die with all your moves unlocked, because that's how, you know, that's how you get the most combos, that's how you have the most fun. And so I was thinking about that, and well, obviously one of the reasons is just because unlocking things and having that soft progress just feels good. It's free dopamine. Oh god, she's gonna blow up. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I like unlocking things. You know, one of the reasons is it's kind of like the human bias, but also I like in RPGs when your actions kind of feel like they mean something. Yeah, she can kill me in one hit because of my low health. I like when it means something when you level up, because in an RPG, if leveling up doesn't mean anything, then there's no point in leveling up. So in a lot of games, if there is a leveling mechanic, then that leveling mechanic should, you know, warrant its existence. So I appreciate that, but I feel like some games don't need RPG mechanics, and they're just there to make you feel like you accomplished something even though you didn't really do anything. Because like farming is not rewarding, farming is not complex, farming is not interacting with the game and its mechanics in a deep way. Farming is just kind of bashing your head against the wall to get stronger, to get like soft progress. So in a way you could say it's like fake. It's like you get stronger, but not due to understanding the game better, due to like you having more skill. You just get better because you bash your head against the wall. And I don't know how I feel about that. I don't like, in Dark Souls, you know, the game will still be difficult enough if you, yeah, at least in Dark Souls the game is still somewhat difficult even if you you level up. And the way HP is given to you is, not HP, the way XP is granted to you is slow enough that even if you farm, it'll take a long time and it's not satisfying. So, and also Dark Souls is an action RPG, so I kind of allow for it to have levels, but at the same time I feel like levels are a cheap way to make you feel like you're progressing, when the true progress should be to learn the game and to just kind of develop that knowledge and everything. She is so strong because of my low health. Is that gonna touch me? Nah. So Quelaag, she attacks a lot in one direction, so if you stay at the side, usually you'll be safe. And then you just have to be careful about her explosions. But now I'm surrounded by lava, which is nice. I like that, you know, once again, when I talk about, there's different ways to create challenge in video games, and it's not just by making enemies do a lot of damage or making them have more complex behaviors. You can also create challenge in different ways, and one of those ways I would say is through creating other kinds of difficulty. So for example, she makes the arena less traversable. You know, she makes the she creates areas where you can't walk and it deals damage, so it limits where you can dodge and where you can be to fight her, which I appreciate, because no other boss so far has done that. You know, some bosses have limited arenas, but she limits her arena in a more dynamic way. Oh my god. I'm gonna use the explosion to run away and buff my weapon. She, because she's left-handed, she attacks a lot in... Oh god, I'm gonna die probably, because I can't get out of her legs. Yeah. But yeah, because she's... No, she's right-handed, but therefore the way she attacks, if you dodge to her left, she's always gonna... You're always gonna... most likely always gonna avoid her attacks. Being cursed is so shitty. I like that a lot. Can you believe that when the game first came out, curse was actually something that could build upon itself? So if you got cursed once, you were at half health, and then if you got cursed the second time while you were already cursed, you would be at a quarter health, and so on. I think there was a point where it stopped, but that's still pretty wild. It's so punishing that I really like that. Or I might be misremembering, but if I'm misremembering, I wish the game did that. Because getting cursed is already like a big deal. So if you got cursed again, you know, that's kind of, now that you know what curse is, it's kind of like, oh shit. You didn't do your precautions. So now you have to pay the price. So I'm pretty weak, and this enemy is pretty strong. She has a lot of health, and she's resistant to magic, I think. So even though my magic does make me a bit stronger, it's still not ideal. I appreciate that this game doesn't have that many multi-enemy bosses. I think multi-enemy bosses is something that you can't pull too often. I think it's something that you have to be what's the word I'm looking for? Economical with. You know, yes, increasing enemy amounts is a good way to increase difficulty for sure. I can't deny that. However, I think it's important that it's important that that's what I'm looking for. It's important that you create difficulty in many different ways, because otherwise things start to feel samey, and you want that variety in encounters. So having some enemies that are difficult because there are multiple enemies is fine, and having some enemies that are difficult because they make the arena fill with lava is good. Having enemies that are difficult just because they have a difficult moveset and they're kind of tricky with their timings, and you know, they're hard to read because they're skilled swordsmen, so they're able to feint and stuff. That's good. You know, having enemies that are difficult because they're like a little puzzle that you have to solve, that's also good. Having enemies that are difficult because they're tanky, but otherwise are pretty simple, that's also good. That's another way to test player skill. You know, it's a bunch of different skills being tested, and that's something that I really like. And people might complain about that. I know people really love the complex, you know, one-on-one fights. That's why stuff like Sekiro is so popular. That's why stuff like you know, the Artorias fight is so popular, or the Nameless King is so popular, but I like all kinds of difficulties. I like all kinds of different challenges. I appreciate all kinds of ways to make something more difficult without having to rely on the same gimmick all the time. And that's something that I think Dark Souls 2 kind of failed with, is that a lot of the bosses, you know, they were just trying to be difficult for difficult's sake, and therefore would either like inflate the numbers a lot, or they would yeah, they would either inflate the numbers a lot, or they would make you fight multiple enemies a lot. And either way, I'm not really about that. I think Demon Souls and Dark Souls kind of had the right idea. I'm just coming back, I'm stupid. Demon Souls and Dark Souls had the right idea of having varied bosses that all felt unique and kind of warranted their existence, so to speak. And you know, Demon Souls, you could say like one of the hardest challenges in the entire game was the Man-Eaters. And the reason the Man-Eaters were so difficult was because they were a 2-enemy boss, and they were both at full health. Dark Souls, in a way, it kind of tries to big dig Demon Souls, where it's like, yeah, we're gonna make you fight 2 enemies really early on as like the first significant boss, aka the gargoyles. And we're gonna make you fight the gargoyles. It's gonna be tough. It's gonna be 2 bosses from the get-go, and that's pretty scary. You know, it's pretty nerve-wracking. And going insane. What even is the point of this area? Because if you drop down, it's fine. I feel like I'm going insane. Follow the lights, follow the lights, follow the lights. This area is pretty gnarly. There's a lot of toxic guys, and you're just getting assaulted by all these toxic guys. Really hardcore. I got toxic, but it's okay, I will survive. Oh my god. When you have such low health, being toxic is pretty scary. Die, mosquito. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so the Man-Eaters is like one of the hardest fights in Demon Souls, because it's 2 enemies with like full power, and it's 2 enemies that are both pretty. They have like a pretty complex moveset, but they have the same moveset, and they're pretty hard. And then in no, stupid dogs. In Dark Souls 1, you know, you fight, and then like there's other multi-enemy bosses like Phalanx, but like Phalanx, you know, all the guys are super weak and they barely move and they barely attack, so it's not a big deal. But the Man-Eaters are a true, actually complex multi-enemy boss, because it's 2 enemies with a hard behavior, and they're both at full power. And then Dark Souls 1 early on is like, yeah, we're gonna make you fight quote unquote the Man-Eaters, we're gonna make you fight the gargoyles, and it's 2 enemies. But they start you off with only 1 that is at full power, and then the second one comes in at lower strength, and the second one is more passive and will mostly shoot fire at you. So even though they introduce complex multi-enemy bosses earlier on, they're also more simple. They're less difficult, and they really don't use multi-enemy bosses that often in Dark Souls 1. They're meant to be like an actually big deal, like a big challenge. And an example of this is, you could say like probably one of the hardest bosses in the game is Marcin and Smo, and one of the reasons they're so difficult is because it's two different guys. And not only that, it's two guys with a different moveset, so it's two guys at full power with a very different moveset that each complements each other. So you're gonna have your fast, nimble guy. You're gonna have your strong, kind of tanky guy who will fill in when the fast guy is not attacking you. And you know, I think that's one way to make a complex multi-enemy boss fight. Another way is just to kind of overwhelm you with numbers, but I think that's a not a bad design, but I think that's a design that it doesn't feel satisfying. Because when the challenge is that you're just being swarmed, it's not that interesting. However, you could say that it tests crowd control and how you're able to manage multiple enemies, and it's more about, you know, being clever about invincibility frames and being clever about crowd control and being clever about like even the range of your weapons and the size of your weapons and everything, which I can respect. I think that's an actual valid point. But despite that, I find that oftentimes most multi-enemy encounters that rely on swarm kind of tactics feel unsatisfying, and I wonder why that is. Like, why is it that if you get swarmed, you know, being able to conquer that swarm, why does it not feel satisfying? Is it because enemies are so weak that you feel like, you know, the reason because they're so weak, it just feels like you're going through the motions? Or is it that it feels cheap? Because I think sometimes things can feel cheap, but we still can appreciate them. So it's a question I guess I'm asking is, why do you think that multi-enemy boss fights, when they're more swarm-like fights, why are they so unsatisfying? And why does even though it's a way to increase difficulty, and it's a thing that tests different mechanics, why does it not feel satisfying? Is it because in this case Dark Souls and its contemporaries and its brothers, you could say, are designed for one-on-one combat, so the fact that swarm fights are not satisfying is because you're not doing one-on-one combat, whereas at least like a 1v1 with like a 1v2 is a little bit better, because you can still kind of single out each guy and do like single player combat one-on-one. Maybe, I don't know. Oh no, they killed their Firekeeper. So Lautrec killed the Firekeeper, if I'm not mistaken. It says so on the item. Mystical orb found on a keeper's corpse. Invade the world of the murderer of a firekeeper to defeat the perpetrator and reclaim the soul of the firekeeper. The Black Eye keeps constant watch on the city of the gods at Orlando. So it doesn't tell you that it's Lautrec, but you can guess that it's Lautrec. And it doesn't work because he's dead. So that's like a pretty rough gut punch. You know, you've been through the depths, you've been to Orlando, you've been getting your ass kicked. It's been super difficult. You know, you might be cursed. You know, you're like, oh, finally the surface. I get to rest at Filing Shrine, and they take away the bonfire from you. How does that feel? It feels terrible, and I love that feeling. You know, I remember when the game came out, there were a lot of guides that were like, make sure to kill Lautrec when you meet him, because he's gonna kill your Firekeeper, and that sucks. I don't know. I like that a lot. I kind of wish it wasn't spoiled by people who make guides, because it's the kind of thing that's so special and so striking and so, like, you could say anti-dopamine, that I just can't help but really love and respect this. But anyway, we're gonna buy a Purging Stone so I can finally get rid of my curse. So one advantage of this is I'm uncursed. So one advantage of this, the fact that my Firekeeper is dead, is that if I use a Homer Bone, it'll bring me back to Blyton. We're back, baby. How much Titanite do I have? 2. Alright, I'm gonna try to get Titanite real quick, just like a little try to kill the slug, see if I can get a little bit of Titanite. That way I can upgrade my weapon, it'll make Quelaag a little bit easier. But otherwise, I'm not gonna try to farm, because I don't like farming when I'm doing videos like this. I guess if you want to talk about enemy consistency and enemy escalation, fighting leeches in a swamp makes total logical sense. And in this case, you know, like I talked about before, the Blighttown is the site of where all the bad juju stuff builds up. So it makes sense that you would fight like these gross mutated spiders and mosquitoes and slugs, and fight these and fight poison, because of course parasites live in the waters. So you know it's kind of the most gross. But then it makes you wonder, like, if the lower and lower and lower you go, the worse things get. Why is it that, you know, there's Ash Lake? And Ash Lake is this beautiful place, and Ash Lake, but Ash Lake is, while it is beautiful, I think it's also kind of like the product of erosion, and therefore, you know, it's all the things that the bad water swept up. You know, all the things that the water swept up as it flowed down kind of accumulated there and got eroded into ash and sand and a beach, because that's what beaches are, just erosion, erosion, erosion until it becomes sand. But also, you know, even though stagnant waters house all the bad stuff, water that flows will necessarily bring things with it. So in, you know, your stagnant swamp, you might find some beauty, so to speak. Because, like, let's say, oh my god, let's say you know, if water flows, it all ends up in one spot, but as the water flowed, it brought with it like a beautiful golden necklace. Then that beautiful golden necklace will exist within the pond at the bottom, where it's all gross. So while bad things exist at the bottom, you will also be able to find some nice things. And in this case, I think Ash Lake is one of those things. Let's try to fight Quelaag again. I also like the transition from Blighttown to Quelaag, because it makes sense that Quelaag is a big insect lady, and there's webs everywhere, so you're like, okay, yeah, it makes sense. Insects, parasites, Blighttown, poison, gross stuff, whatever. And but the fact that she's like burning and stuff, it might make you wonder, like, what's going on here. But as soon as you reach the next area, it all makes sense. So when I was talking about earlier about how do you make something feel like an area instead of feeling like a level, and how do you connect things together? Well, that's one way. You can do it with bosses, where a boss will represent like the thematic. A boss will represent like a thematic connection between two areas and kind of gently guide the flow from one to the other. That's one way. Because while she is an insect, therefore, you know, she would fit in Blighttown, she is also a demon, and we're about to enter a demon area. And demons, as we know, are filled with the Chaos Flame. That's why they burn. And, you know, it says that she's a witch, so you can kind of, if you go back to the introduction cutscene of the game, the only mention of witches we have are the witches of Izalith, who weaved great firestorms. So you might think that, well, she's probably a witch of Izalith because she's a witch and she has fire. But it makes you wonder, like, why the hell is she a big spider lady? And once again, you know, that's the the burden of story, it makes you wonder. So if you pay attention and you think about it and you try to remember it, then you, oh god, you'll be able to make some connections and try to guess what the deal here is. I think Quellag's an interesting boss because she's a melee boss first and foremost, and her range attacks are less about the fact that they're ranged and more about the lava that they create, like I said. And because it's a melee boss, you know, you're gonna have to move around to try to go fight her. So the fact that there's things that can obstruct your movement is nice for a melee boss because it creates that extra complexity. But also, because it's a melee boss, if you stay close to her, which you need to do to fight her, if you stay close to her, the lava doesn't really do anything to you because you're close enough to her that the lava that she spits away from her won't really touch you. So while it does increase complexity, it's not the hardest boss, but at the same time, because of the explosion move and because of her slams, you might have to back off. And if you're trying to back off in this lava, you might get stuck. So I think it's a nice, the way everything works together is pretty nice. Also, every time you beat a boss, you get a homeward bone, but this time you didn't get a homeward bone because you're supposed to not go back immediately. You're supposed to continue forward, pull this, get your little cutscene. This cutscene kind of, I don't know how I feel about this cutscene because when you ring the bells, it's kind of triumphant. So it is nice that they show you have like a little moment of respite with a cutscene after you ring the bells. And in this case, when you ring the second bell, it shows Sen's Fortress opening. So since it shows, and then you get your homeward bone, and since it shows Sen's Fortress opening, then you can make a guess like, oh well, that means now I need to go to Sen's Fortress. And I don't really like the idea that to know how to progress is to go to Sen's Fortress. But there's other ways to know how to progress, so it's not that bad. It's just that I guess the cutscene is if you don't talk to, oh, there's also an invisible wall here. If you don't talk to players, if you don't talk to NPCs, there would be no real way to know how to go, that you have to go to Sen's Fortress. So either you figure it out by just exploring and eventually coming across Sen's Fortress, or you figure it out because of this cutscene.
Oh dear, what have we here? Are you a new servant?
Yes.
But you have no eggs. No matter. Go along and have audience with our fair lady. I pray that you will mind your manners.
So once again, there's music that plays, and it's not diegetic, of course, but in this case, it's pretty tragic. You know, the way she moves, she doesn't move a lot, and she doesn't speak. You can reinforce your S's here, but I have to keep at least one of my. Where is it? I guess I only had one. You don't get the Firekeeper soul when from your own from the Firelink Shrine Firekeeper because somebody stole it. That's why. Okay, I was like looking for my other one. So she is like quite like she's a spider lady, but she's covered in eggs and she's all kind of being she looks sick and infected, and she doesn't look very healthy. And I don't know if he says anything about it.
Prepare then. I will give you needs. There is no time for idle chat. Think only of our...
Yeah. I'm gonna... Oh yeah, I don't have my Pyromancy Flame yet. I'm gonna enter the Covenant. I'm gonna devote myself to this lady. If you look at her, you know, she's a lot thinner than Quelaag, and she doesn't have big titties like Quelaag, so that's I guess that's like you can make that connection that like, oh, she's probably sick and sickly and thin and whatever. Talk, but she says nothing. However, if you're clever, or if you pay attention to things, an old ring with no known use. Old ring from an old witch, engraved minutely with undecipherable script, but seemingly useless. But you can guess that she's a witch, because, you know, she's Quelaag's sister, and Quelaag was a witch, it said. Oh. You talk to her. You have your ring.
Quelaag, my dear sister. Quelaag, what is it? Quelaag, my dear sister. The eggs, it hurts. They've gone still. I am afraid it may be too late. I am so sorry, dear sister. I'll be fine. I have you, dear sister. But promise me that you will take care of yourself. I'll be but that
So yeah, basically, Quelaag
do be safe.
Quelaag was defending her sister, who was sick and struggling.
You again. There is nothing to say except if you lay a hand on the fair lady, you should be prepared to face my wrath. There is nothing to...
So she said that her eggs they're still and they hurt. So you can probably imagine that well, you learn if you talk to her more and you talk to Ingi over here more. Basically, she took on the blight that's going on here to help everybody and ease their pain. And being a firekeeper, she has a deformation, and in this case, the deformation, I believe that she's blind. Every firekeeper has a problem. The one at Farning Shrine can't speak. She's blind. There's another one later who they say she's deformed and has like almost like no skin. And I believe if you kill her and read her soul, it says that each egg is a cradle for humanity, and firekeepers are basically a cradle of humanity. So she stores the humanity in the eggs. The fact that she said the humanity is still in the eggs means that she's probably dying. That's why you give her humanity, because maybe she can't produce her own humanity anymore because of the eggs. So basically, yeah, I'm gonna give her a bunch of humanity, and we'll see. Because I want the pyromancies that she gives you, but also I want to open a shortcut later on, because I think it could lead to some interesting scenarios. Something that Dark Souls doesn't let you do, which the remaster lets you do and the sequels let you do, is it lets you use multiple items. In this case, you know, I have to eat one every time individually. I should wear my ring and see if she says anything when I give it.
Oh my, don't mind me. It does not hurt terribly.
You also have to give one by one. Now, this is one of those things that I think you could say the remaster actually improved, was the fact that you can use up multiple items in one go, and you can give up multiple items in one go instead of having to give them one by one. So, you know, once again, this is, you could say this is like the burden of story and the burden of beauty, but it's like if you care, you'll actually, if you care, you'll interact with these kinds of things. And in this case, if you care enough to kind of do a little bit of research on her by finding the ring and talking to her, you learn that, you know, she's dying and she's sickly and she's having issues, and so then it makes you think like, well then Quelaag was definitely protecting her. And even if you don't talk to her, you can tell that Quelaag is protecting her, but now you understand even more that like she's sick and dying, so Quelaag protecting her, that was like a big deal. And when you see all these egg people that are worshipping her, you understand that like the egg blight is actually really bad, and the fact that she had to take on a little bit of the egg blight herself. I believe she starts to move more and is more healthy if you, the more humanity you give her. Like her legs move more and stuff.
You speak the tongue of the fair lady?
That's right.
Well, do not be rash with your pride. You have yet to earn my trust. If you try anything funny with the fair lady, there will be hell to pay. There is nothing to except you.
This guy's just jealous of me. I don't mind using up almost all of my humanity because it's pretty easy to get. The only part is that I have to use every single one by one. You know, this is one of those things that in hindsight, it's like, why didn't they do it? It's one of those, it's the kind of streamlining that I don't think is negative, because it doesn't impact the systems of the games in any way. It's like, you're not streamlining the game to make it easier or to make the systems more, you know, dumb-proof, so to speak. You're streamlining something that actually kind of sucks to do. For example, I think this, letting you use multiples of an item, that's the good kind of streamlining. Whereas in Monster Hunter, for example, not letting you letting go of temporary pickaxes where your pickaxes can break. I think that's because, like, in old Monster Hunter games, you could break your pickaxe, so you had to buy pickaxes to collect ore, and it had a certain number of uses, and after a while it would break. And I don't remember if it's random or if it's based on a certain number of uses, but basically your pickaxes would break. So before going on quests, you would necessarily buy pickaxes, you would buy bug nets, you would buy things to collect these materials. And then it was all about preparation, because Monster Hunter was all about preparation. So then in the new games, now, you know, there's no such thing as buying pickaxes. You just have the ability to collect materials in the wild, and there's no, you don't need to prepare anymore. You don't need to think about how many pickaxes you have. You don't need to spend money on pickaxes or spend resources on pickaxes. So I think that's the kind of streamlining that's, in my opinion, bad, because it encourages laziness. And Monster Hunter is all about not being lazy. It's about preparing. It's about being ready for your missions. Like, you know, it's about, even if you know you're just gonna go fight a monster, even if you know you're gonna go hunt a monster, you still might find materials during the quest. So it's useful to you to to buy things and be prepared. But by streamlining it, now that sense of preparation is entirely gone. There's same thing. So that's like good streamlining versus bad streamlining. And I think, you know, people will lump them in together, like, oh, streamlining makes the game experience smoother, so you can get to the gameplay directly faster, which is true. But I think in some cases, the tedium is part of the experience, and it's actually important to the experience. And like I say, you know, you're not, like I always say, you're not entitled to free dopamine when you play video games. I think some video games are all about that free dopamine, but sometimes, you know, there's a little bit more going on with games than simple. There's a little bit more going on in games than simple the gameplay loop, so to speak. I think games are more than the sum of their parts, and when people talk about a game and all they talk about is, oh well, the gameplay loop is really satisfying, blah blah blah, gameplay loop, gameplay loop, gameplay loop. I think it shows that people see games as not a complete work, but rather just a means to an end to get to the gameplay, which, yes, the gameplay is the be-all end-all, but the gameplay is everything working together to create a seamless experience. The gameplay is not just fighting bosses. The gameplay is not just killing guys. The gameplay is traveling between locations. The gameplay is interacting with the menu. The gameplay is, interacting with your resources and stuff. Preparation, stuff like that. And here, because of the magma, my game's lagging a little bit, because if you play in 4K 60 FPS with the mod, and you have a recording software that records at 4K 60 FPS, even with a good PC, it's gonna have performance issues. And the original Dark Souls patch is also not known for having the best. It's not known for having the best performance, especially in Blacktown and in places where there's lots of particle effects. Look at this guy. He's called Ceaseless Discharge. He's non-aggressive until you anger him. He just looks in pain, he just looks so tired and so hurt. Pretty tragic. His story is pretty tragic if you pay attention to his items. Solo Quelaag, once daughter of the Witch of Izalith, but now a Chaos Demon. Special beings have special souls, and Quelaag's soul contains all aspects of chaos. Use it to acquire a huge amount of souls or to create a unique weapon. I'm gonna anger this guy. I got his sister's clothes. So as far as we know, the sisters of all the Chaos Witches, the Witches of Izalith, wore that outfit. So Ceaseless Discharge, if you want, you can fight him like this. But it's one of those bosses where if you don't want to fight him like this, you can actually have a special interaction, which I like. I like when there's when bosses and things in video games have special interactions if you think about them. So if you look at the arena, there's a big pit over here instead of where he's standing. Because where he's standing, it's like an elevated platform, but then over here there's a big pit. So you can actually use the fact that there's a big pit to your advantage. I don't know how you're supposed to figure this out, but it's something I figured out once. Because, well, I didn't figure it out. Somebody told me about it, and then I tried it. But basically, if you go all the way over here, Ceaseless Discharge follows you, and he's so desperate to kill you because he's so mad that you stole his sister's clothes. Oh god, I fell down there too. But basically, he'll jump to try to get to you, and you can kill him. I'll show it for sure, but I just need to wear the clothes now. These clothes are very powerful. They offer really good elemental protection and actually pretty good physical protection too. Worn by the witch Quelaana of Izalith, mother of pyromancy and daughter of chaos. She wore this gold hem black hood before even the age of fire and offers strong resistance versus fire, poison, and other perils. Based on what I can gather from the lore, seems like in Dark Souls, the pyromancers are people who are very in tune with the elements and with life in general. Because in Dark Souls fire is life, it makes sense that people who manipulate fire in all of its ways would be survivalists who are able to deal with the elements and with poison and fire and all aspects of life, especially because it's said that pyromancers come from the Great Swamp. So we're gonna let Ceaseless Discharge walk up to us. I like that he detaches his arm from himself. Because right now he's like his arm is stuck to him. It's lagging a lot actually, the frame rate. He's pretty mad at you. Does he just spam this attack if you're here? Let's forget. Yeah, I think you have to go to where he is. He'll detach his arm, and then you can pull him over here. So yeah, you're really supposed to go to the arena, trigger him to detach his arm, because right now his arm is not detached. So you're supposed to go to his arena, trigger his arm, then run back. That's why you. That's how like you can't cheese him by. Because imagine if you fight him, you die, you come back, and then when you come back, he just jumps and kills himself, like I'm trying to show. Like he does this special interaction, like I'm trying to show. Like it would be so. It wouldn't be clever. It would just be like a. It would almost feel like an accident, like a bug. But if you actually draw him all the way there, then it's a different story altogether, because then it's about you being clever. Whereas if you just camp here and hope for him to come and then die like I just did, then it's not satisfying. It's not clever. Yeah, you want him to detach his arm, because right now his arm is attached to his body. We're gonna go around here to avoid his attacks. It's pretty smart, you know, they thought about it, because the lead up is so long that... If I'm not mistaken, this... Okay, so his arm is attached now, so he's you can even see it, like, left a big hole in him. The hole is reminiscent of the hole that you have on your chest when you're hollow. So it makes me wonder if he's if it's just supposed to be a visual resemblance and it actually means something, or if it's just because he detached his arm and it's to show that it, like, he's so hardcore about it that. But it's actually something that happens pretty often in the Soul series. Is like enemies that detach their limbs to fight you. Like there's the Great Giant, there's the Last Giant in Dark Souls 2. There's Amygdala in Bloodborne. There's Ceaseless Discharge in Dark Souls 1. Is there anybody in Demon Souls who does that? I feel like there is a guy in Demon Souls who does that. So he'll do his jump, he'll miss, and then he's like hanging on for dear life with his arm. And then if you hit his arm enough times, he lets go and he falls down. And he even has a special animation for it. No. So that's one way to kill Ceaseless Discharge if you want to kill him in a easy way, by having environmental awareness. I think everybody kills him is this way now, which is kind of sad because he's an okay boss fight. It's just that it takes a while and he's big and the hitboxes are clunky, but it's an okay boss fight. Having a little gimmick like this I actually appreciate. Once again, I know people kind of dislike gimmick bosses because it doesn't feel like a real challenge because it's just a puzzle solving thing, but what's wrong with puzzle solving? What's wrong with like having to be clever and having situational awareness? I like Demon Ruins. I like the architecture. It looks very strange and different and weird. That's something I appreciate about it. And once again, you know, what's below Blighttown? The stagnant waters? Well, there's demons. What's worse than parasites? Demons. Demons are a blight upon Lordran. All these demons that spawn from you know, the flames of chaos. And that's what's worse about that's what's even worse than what's festering down here. Demons being spawned by the flames of chaos. Even worse than the poison and disease of Blighttown. So I got a little bit more humanity from Ceaseless Discharge. I'm gonna go give it to our little lady over here. So now we're gonna go back to the surface. And going back to the surface is pretty satisfying. Like I did it earlier to get rid of my curse, but the going up to the surface is it's like a, yeah, it's something you're looking forward to, right? You've been down here for so long, and like, I want to go back to Lordran, see my friends. Not Lordran, but I want to go back to the surface and see my friends and talk to the NPCs and stuff. And it almost feels like an eternity has passed. Like you're like, oh, you wonder what's going on up there. Like, are they okay? Has anything changed? You know, what's been going on while I was gone? It's like going on a trip. When you come back from your trip, you know, you want to tell people about your trip, but you also wonder, like, I was gone for like a month. Like, what did they do while I was? What happened during a month? You know, I haven't been here in so long. And what's nice about Dark Souls too is that the NPCs, you know, they live their own lives. They have their own quests to do. They're doing their own things. So at the same time, you might expect them to not be there anymore. You might expect them to have gone somewhere and done their own thing. That's also something I find pretty cool about this part of like going back up, is it really makes you wonder what's about to, where you're gonna find, you know. The trek upwards is pretty fun. I got lost like you saw, but it's not so bad. It's weird when you have the DS fix. So something that I think is pretty funny is, you might be thinking like, how does this spin on its own? Well, it actually doesn't spin on its own. There's a little dog inside that spins this thing. I don't know if you can see it. I'm trying to find it. But inside the wheel, this little dog that's walking, and it's like spinning the wheel, and like it's kind of stupid that it's just like this little dog, but at least it gives like a little joke explanation as to why this is spinning. This is also something that I appreciate about Dark Souls, because Dark Souls is such a vertical game. You know, there's a lot of elevators and there's a lot of methods to go up, and each area has its own well-defined ascension method, I guess you could say. You know, Blytown has ladders, it has that wheel thing. It's very like haphazardly built, it looks like. It's very awkward to go up. But then a place like Anor Londo, which is like this regal town, this regal city with like advanced technology, and like it's a place of like convenience and everything. There's a lot of elevators and lifts and things like that. It's all kind of automated and with pressure plate and stuff. And New Londo kind of has that too. So, and since New Londo is, well, New Londo, it's like the second Anor Londo, so it makes you think that they would have similar technology, that it would be a similar kind of advanced place. And you know, New Londo has also kind of has technology. And then, you know, the Undead Burg had a lot of doors because there's a lot of houses. It's a village after all, so there's a lot of doors. And there's a lot of gates because it's like a castle rampart kind of thing. So there's a lot of like metal gates and things like that, fortifications. So a lot of the shortcuts are more, it's things that you would expect to see in a castle town, or like in a castle rampart. And then Sense Fortress has lots of traps, and it has like cages everywhere because it's like a torture. It has like a torture chamber. So, funnily enough, one of the elevators is like it's like a cage. And the elevators and stuff are a little bit more rudimentary. And then the Duke's Archives just has like weird rotating stairs. But it makes sense because it's like a gigantic library, so how do you access all those books? Well, you access all those books by rotating stairs, which also feels very kind of magic mansion, magic school kind of place. I like that each place really has its own identity, and they even think about the identity of that place from a how do you say, from a design standpoint of how you get around as well, not just from what it looks like. Something I really respect. Because you want to make everything feel cohesive, you know, not just the art direction, but also just like the logic of the place itself. And I'm gonna go explore New Londo a little bit before I go to Sans Fortress. But one thing I want, and I'll talk about New Londo a little bit, but before I do, I wanted to talk about how when you look at the map like this, you know, you see a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is actually not. Some of it is obviously like background stuff, but a lot of it is stuff that you can actually go. Like a lot of places in Dark Souls, if you see it in the distance, you'll probably go there eventually. And you know, in Skyrim, during its marketing, I remember Todd Howard, you know, he would always say, "See that mountain? You can climb it," which is kind of true. But in Dark Souls, it's a little bit more true in the sense that, like, while it's not truly an open world, there is this sense of if you see something, it probably is connected geographically to something else. Like, see that that wall? Well, that's like all the way up there. That's like Undead Bird and stuff. See that bird? You can get to that bird. When you're in Undead Berg, you see like see that bridge over there. You can go up there. Not the aqueduct, but like the bridge up there. You can go up there.
That is incredible, I must say. But now we have a new problem. It's noisy, it snores, and its breath is lethal. This is no laughing matter, I tell you. Damn, that stench. And I was really beginning to like it here. Maybe it's time I do something about it. Maybe.
So our good friend here is kind of annoyed by something that stinks really bad and snores. Oh, look at that.
Well, I see you made it out. Yeah, I made it out safely too. I have my pyromancy of the Great Swarm, so I can use the manage with a bit of care. Oh yeah, by the way, I can share my spells with you. I think you have a knack for it. All you need are the materials. I'll be pleased to help you. Unless you find the magic's unsavory.
No, I don't find the magic unsavory.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm sure that they'll be of some use, some assistance. Here, first take this. A flame from the Great Swamp. Now you're a fully fledged pyromancer. Why, let's get started right now.
Combustion's pretty useful. Fireball's useful. You can increase your pyromancy flame with souls, which is something I think is very interesting because it means that you can get spells and long-ranged options as any build, no matter what your stats are, as long as you have enough souls to invest in your pyromancy flame. It's kind of cool.
Goodbye then. Come back if you find anything new.
So I'm gonna pop a few souls now, so I can buy a few more things from him. It's gonna take a while. So in the meantime, I'll talk about magic a little bit. So in Dark Souls, there's three main types of magic. There's miracles, there's pyromancy, and there's sorceries. Sorceries scale on intelligence and require a catalyst to cast. Miracles scale on faith and require a what do you call them? A talisman to cast. And the pyromancy scales on the strength of your pyromancy flame and don't require anything. No, they don't require any stats, and they require a pyromancy flame to cast. And pyromancy tends to be a little bit more like short-ranged magic, a little bit more like buffs and debuffs kind of thing. Status effects and whatnot. It's a bit less about long range, which is what spells are about, sorceries are about. And miracles are more like buffs, healing, and certain specific things that use like the lightning element or whatever. And what I like about the magic schools is that there's also like slight, I guess you could say, like subcategories of those magic schools. Like there's pyromancy and there's chaos pyromancy, there's sorceries, golden sorceries, and crystal sorceries, and dark sorceries. And then miracles, there's like offensive kind of lightning based miracles. There's status effect, there's healing miracles, and then there's which I guess you could say like support miracles. Then there's kind of aggressive miracles that don't really have an element to them.
Oh, hello there. I'm pleased to see you safe. As always, if you provide the materials, I can teach you pyromancy.
I'm just gonna buy everything he has, and I'm gonna increase my pyromancy flame.
Pyromancy is the art of casting fire. Produce flame, then channel it, just as our ancestors did. A pyromancer must be in tune with nature herself. My home, the Great Swamp, is an abundant store of nature. You will understand one day. It only takes time.
I don't know if the Great Swamp is Blighttown or not. Like the soul of the swamp of Blighttown. Because they say that Koilana is the one who created pyromancy. And Koilana hides in the Blighttown swamp. And a lot of the pyromancies, there are some pyromancies that are like poison spells. And if you read the item for the pyromancer armor, code worn by pyromancer of the Great Swamp, though it appears tattered, it actually is quite strong. Offers substantial protection against poison, fire, and other forces of nature out in the hinterlands where they were driven. And it says the same thing about here. It says strong resistance versus fire, poison, and other perils. So it's possible that, you know, the pyromancers used to come from Izalith.
Oh, hello there. I'm pleased to see you safe. As always.
Yeah, pyromancers used to come from Izalith, but then they got kicked out of Izalith by the demons and by the Witches of Chaos that got corrupted by the Flame of Chaos and were sent to the Great Swamp, which would make sense because if you look geographically, we'll be there later, but like the city of Izalith and the demon ruins are connected to Blighttown.
Pyromancy has a, well, rather primitive aspect to it. It meshes poorly with advanced culture, and pyromancers are considered rather unsavory, which is fine, as I never got along with anybody anyway. So, for me, turning undead didn't change a thing.
Oh, what a nice guy.
Pyromancer's flame is a part of his own body. The flame develops right along with his skill. When I gave you that flame, I gave you a part of myself. Please take good care of it.
It's very very intimate act, giving somebody your pyromancy flame, which is something that I find very like touching, very and it makes sense because, like he says, you know, the pyromancies are part of your who they are, and it's primitive. It's like primordial.
Oh, you again? Me? I've become separated from my lady. I've scoured near and far, but no sight of her. Where could she have gone? My lady, to think I swore to protect you with my life. Your Highness, where have you gone? I am entirely to blame for this. Oh, woe is me. I am unworthy, deathly so. Oh, I'm sorry. Miracles, was it? Sometimes I lose myself. Pay me no mind.
Can't even talk with him. He's just too distraught and he doesn't care about you. I'm gonna talk to everybody because, you know, like I said, it's like coming back from a trip. You want to know what everybody's been up to.
Oh, hello. Well, you certainly are keeping at it. Myself, I'm fine. I wish to do what I can to locate Master Logan. I am aware of my shortcomings, but I cannot very well just sit around here and rot. Oh, do not worry. I have considered our relationship. I will only leave after I have taught you all the sorceries that I know. I shall count myself lucky if I manage to locate Logan, or even return here in one piece.
I will try to buy everything he has.
Two things are...
And then he's just pluralizing grocery to me. Yeah, because I want to be like a hybrid melee caster kind of thing, I want to have short-ranged casting, so that would mean pyromancy, and that would mean spells that buff my weapon. Hello, you look so no, I'm not going to talk to him actually, because if you talk to him it breaks a thing that I want to do later. But this is what happens when you ring the Bells of Awakening, and he's the one who tells you to seek Anor Londo, and therefore you have to go through Sin's Fortress and stuff. That's one way to know how to progress, in case you don't know how. Can I equip? I know I roll slowly if I equip these. I'm just gonna go rest at the blacksmith's bonfire, but I will explore New Londo. That's my next destination. Yeah. My next destination is gonna be New Londo, because if you do certain things in New Londo early, you get access to some cool stuff. And also, you know, I'm so excited. Also because it's connected to Blighttown, so when you come back from Blighttown, it's like right there. So I think it's logical too that as I come back from Blighttown, I should go there. And also because I want to show a few things. But this is like one of my favorite parts of Dark Souls is the like coming back from Blighttown, seeing how everything's changed. You feel so much stronger. Like you've gone through so much, you feel so much stronger. There's like a weird worm at Firelink Shrine now. It's just kind of strange. You know, it's kind of like in if you want to look at it this way, it's kind of like in the hero's journey when the hero comes back from the underworld or whatever it's called, and you know, he has strengthened his resolve and honed his skills. God damn it! Messed up my jump. I'm gonna do a little optional thing here. And it's probably gonna be difficult to succeed at because collisions are super weird and with the FDS fix, but oh, I did it! But now that's a bit rough. I don't know why I'm doing this. I'm gonna be too weak. I'll do it when I come back from New Londo, like I said. I'm gonna be too weak to do this. Well, not too weak, but it's just gonna be a hassle because I'm weak. It's gonna be a hassle. Undead Asylum, F2 West Key. Why would I be able to find an item from the Undead Asylum? Well, because clearly you can go back to the Undead Asylum. But how would one do that, I wonder? Who knows? Wait. What? Oh! Our good friend's gone. I wonder where he's gone. And to handle how stinky Frampt was. I like that NPCs move around like that. I know I always say it, but it's so great to have a game where NPCs don't give a shit about you. Because it means that also when they do give a shit about you, like Laurentius, who's a nice guy, or like Solaire, who's a friendly guy, or like you know, NPCs that actually care. I mean, even Crestfallen Warrior, he might be depressed and like he makes light of the situation a little bit by making dark jokes, but you know, you can tell that he kind of cares because he talks to you and he gives you advice and he kind of tries to encourage you a little bit. But you know, I love the NPCs. Well, you know, something that people kind of make fun of a little bit is that you know, all the NPCs have tragic stories, so you kind of start to expect it. But pretty oh my god, I keep missing my parries. This guy actually can parry you, but I broke his guard, so he's pretty strong actually. He's a good fighter. Makes you wonder why he's crestfallen. So long, my friend. But yeah, one thing I like about the NPCs like this, even though all their stories end tragically, you could say, so it's like, oh, what you know, this it's like the From Software gimmick, it's expected now. But one thing I like about the NPC stories is that some of them are bright, which is why the fact that they end in sadness makes them tragic, and sometimes the fact that you can kind of give them, you can make them survive, but surviving is like a fate worse than death. That's also something that I appreciate. And the fact that a lot of the NPCs do their own thing and exist for their quests, and you just happen to intersect with them. Like I said, it helps with the lonely feeling of Dark Souls, which is something that I absolutely love, because Dark Souls is just this kind of dreary, lonely experience where it's you and your weapons. And Andre kind of says that to you. He says, always trust your weapons, because they'll never disappoint you. But he's right. In Dark Souls, the only thing that's very consistent is your weapons. Otherwise, almost every character in the game will pop in and out of your life and will die, and they're kind of unreliable. And anyway, so what I want to talk about too about the NPC stories and the NPCs in general is that a lot of them end up going hollow, but not all of them. And going hollow is something that's not totally explained fully, but from what we can gather, going hollow is basically that you lose your mind because you've died. It's implied it's like dying a lot makes you lose your souls and your humanity, so over time, if you die too many times, you go hollow. But going hollow also seems to kind of happen to characters who, as far as we know, haven't died a single time. So hollow is like the fate of the undead. Almost all undead go hollow at some point. And I believe the explanation for that is that when you're undead, you're immortal. And being immortal means that if you have no purpose in life, you basically aren't able to do anything. You're basically a stagnant entity, and you go crazy and lose yourself because you have no purpose anymore. So the point of Dark Souls is that you should always have a purpose, because otherwise you'll lose yourself. Which, is something that I think is it's a nice message, I guess. But also, in case of the Crestfallen Warrior, he goes hollow after he leaves Firelink Shrine. And if you think that Firelink Shrine is like the convergence point for many people's adventures, then that would mean that now that he's no longer in Firelink Shrine, he doesn't see many adventures anymore, so he can't give advice. And he can't talk to people. So you could say that even though he was this depressed, lonely ex-soldier, that his purpose, his life was all about helping travelers and helping people who pass by Firelink Shrine. And it's kind of tragic to think about, because your success and the fact that he can't really give you advice anymore because you know everything already now, and the fact that he is no longer at Firelink Shrine and can't meet newcomers anymore, means he loses his purpose and he goes crazy. But it's bittersweet, because this character that, as far as you know, is just kind of an asshole, turns out he's actually kind of a nice guy, and his entire thing was about helping people. And a lot of the characters are like this. They lose their... They go... Either they go crazy because they can't accomplish their goals, or they go crazy because they have no goals anymore, because they've already accomplished it, and then it's like, well, now what? And there's many examples of this. And sometimes it's due to your own actions, and sometimes it's due to their actions. Because while NPCs don't exist for your convenience, sometimes NPC progression will only occur if you interact with them. For example, the Crestfallen Warrior will not leave Firelink Shrine if you don't talk to him, because you have to hear his dialogue line about complaining that Frampt stinks before he leaves. And certain NPCs, interacting with them is what causes them to go crazy, because you give them information necessary to continue their quest, and then that information makes them continue their quest, and on continuing their quest, they end up going crazy. So I think that's also something that's nice in a way, but at the same time kind of tragic, which is the fact that as the player, you want to help. Look at all those ghosts, crazy. As the player, you want to help these NPCs. You want to give them advice. You want to guide them, because you care about them, or because but by helping them and by interacting with them, and basically by, like I said, the burden of story, by giving into the burden of story and looking into the burden of story, you develop the story, but then you end up making yourself sad because the stories are always tragic. But you would never find it tragic unless you cared in the first place. So it's nice that necessarily only people who care will see the NPC stories, and the people who care are the people who are going to be affected by them anyways. So it's like a win-win for the developers. I think it's rather clever.
I may even be of some help.
He sells resist curse, which gives you basically it's what he does. If you give him a humanity, he will fix your curse. And in this case, I'm not cursed anymore, so it's fine.
I am the guardian of the sea. I watch over the four kings, the masters of the dark wraiths. The dark wraiths are the enemies of man, and any living thing that has a soul. They were born in New Londo, and that is where they perished. The entire city was sacrificed to contain them, for that is how great a threat they were. They were for that.
He doesn't say much, but you can kill him, which is what I'm gonna do because I need something from him.
Oh, you are no different from the rest. So be it. I am Ingward, the guardian of the sea. Prepare to meet your doom.
I wanted the key to the seal because I want to open the seal early, and he will not give you the seal unless you have the... He's not going to give you the seal unless you have the Lord Vessel, because then he's like, oh, well, you're worthy of the key to the seal. You'll know what to do with this. But I wanted the key to the seal before getting the Lord Vessel, because I have some business to attend to here. I'm also probably going to die. There's so many ghosts, and I'm so low on health, and I have no Estus. So I'm gonna do my best to survive. But a lot of the ghosts kind of reset their position, so I should be okay. Oh god, there's like ghosts right there. Where is my humanity at? No! Well, at least I didn't use my humanity. It's okay. I'm gonna go to the bathroom because all this talking of flooding New Londo and the seal, you know, my seal has been broken and I need to flood my toilet.